work dictates. So yeah, there's not a lot I can really do about it with a full-time job as well. So like, I hope we're all doing extremely well this Thursday, the 11th of December. This week is flying by, absolutely. This week's flying by. This month is flying by. I hope the Christmas shopping is on the agenda. Yeah, so the first thing to say is, look, please get into this community and into this amazing community. We're not the biggest, we're not the smallest, but I think we certainly are the best. So get in there. Look, be respectful to the chat, be respectful to the community. Otherwise, the banner hammer does come out, and it's not something that we like to do, but something that we have to do, sadly. Second of all, I'm not a dictator of this chat. I really do respect your opinions, and yeah, that's why these shows take so long, is because I genuinely do read out your opinions and your chats, and I give you a platform to voice your opinion. So look, let's get into it today. Again, I want to know your thoughts and feelings on this club. Let me know really what you think about this club. Let me know what you think about the stuff that we've heard. We're going to go into the Kobbie Mainoo stuff. I know that's been out a couple of days. I've not done a show for a couple of days now, and yeah, so I just wanted to kind of get up to date. I've got my book of notes, so really is that time to start talking about stuff again. As I said before, we're going to get a lot of transfer spin now. We're going to get a lot of stuff. I mean, from what I've really seen, I don't even think the club are bothering really to put out the spin anymore. They put out the statement, well, not a statement, but well, etc. We're basically talking about how they don't plan to do any signings. The Kobbie Mainoo stuff is interesting. That's coming out again. I don't like to rehash old stuff, and I don't really want to talk about. Welcome, Bobby. I hope you're doing extremely well, my friend. And look, I've not done a show for yesterday at all, so look, I apologise for that, just because of work and stuff takes over. I went to London yesterday for work and had a bit of a Christmas party, had a little bit of drink, so I could have streamed from the venue, but it would have been really noisy. So look, Scott's in the chat, and look, guys, I apologise for not doing a show yesterday. I was up in that London, doing some work and having a couple of beers. It's something that I've got to do for work. So look, I apologise. Later than advertised today as well, just because of work. Sorry, Dino. So again, these bloody names, they always do me, Dino, and I apologise, my friend. So look, I want you to get into the chat today. I want you. I wasn't too bad. I had a couple of beers. I still had to get home on a train. So again, absolutely no issue for me. But I did enjoy myself. I don't really drink that often. But when it's a free bar, you can't say fairer than that, right? So give me your opinions on what's happened this week, what you think about the transfers, because look, this is what's going to come out now. You've got Mainoo again. The only reason I'm talking about it again, because there has been some new stuff. No, it is Bobby. I was right. I was right in the first place, Bobby. I was right. I blame Scott. No, I was right. I was right in the first place. So look, what I do want to know is what you think about the stories. I think I'm going to be proved right on this one about what's going to happen in the transfer window. Hopefully I'm going to be wrong. I know tonight I probably will do a show again tonight, because I want to go through the Bournemouth game as well, as early as we possibly can, really. I think the presser will be tomorrow for the Monday night game. Jebby, probably confused why I called you Mark, Bobby. It's look, these these new names and stuff are just absolutely. John McQueen says no probs with Mainoo leaving on loan. He's not starting games because Amorim sees him as in training and doesn't see enough. And look, John, and again, I want you to get in your opinions before I go through what's come out today. We spoke about Mainoo, what Nicky Butt said, what Zirkzee said about him as well, and I do think it's a shame. I do genuinely think that it's a shame. I do think that as a club, I think we've let him down. Now, how can you let a young guy? The caveat to that for me though is players of that age do have an up and down, because he's 18 years old, thrust into the squad. I think he saved Ten Hag's bacon really, and it's a failure on a club. And again, let me ask you the question. Mitch says, "Yo, United guy, I hope we were doing extremely well." My real life name is Mark, but Bobby is cool. Do you want to confuse? Oh, Mark, confusing, my friend. But look, I'm gonna have to write these things down, because you guys are the legends. Along now with Mitch as well. Next, so guys, the main thing is Mark Van Bommel. I mean, Mark Van Bommel, Jesus, is Goldbridge in disguise. Well, I wouldn't blame him. We are the best. And if Mark wants to steal some stuff that we're talking on here, that's up to him. I'm just saying. Mark Van Bommel, I remember Mark Van Bommel well. Great player. We were linked with him for years and years and years. Josh, thanks. Thanks. I've never heard that before. But yeah, thank you. I mean, I have heard it from the missus, but I've not heard it on here before. Just to clear that, But yeah, what I really want to know is, before we get into this, my name is Guys Like Disguise. Honestly, it's some time. What do you think of Memphis Depay? He's world class if he plays for the national team. Mitch, I've never thought Depay is class. And again, that's your opinion. I've got no problem. In basically Defo Goldbridge. Defo never been world class for me. That's all I'm going to say. Is again, look. This place is about your opinions, right? If you think a player is world class, just because I don't necessarily agree, doesn't mean that it's not true. Now, look, just because he's the top goal scorer and the top assister for Holland, there are players out there, that score goals all of the time. I think for Holland, Holland have had a little bit of a lean spell of late. Holland used to have some fantastic players. I don't think, and this is my view, I don't think Memphis Depay for me is up there. I think he's the best of a bad bunch. Holland used to have. I mean, we're talking. Even modern players or modernish players like Van Persie. Robin, a sort of winger forward type. Ruud van Nistelrooy. Depay for me, Mitch, is not on par with any of those. So as much as I respect the opinion, absolutely, you respect the opinion. Just for me, Memphis Depay is not a world class player. I agree he's not world class for clubs. For the national team, without him, the Netherlands may not have qualified. I agree with that. No, I think there are some players that play better for their. Steve says Marco van Basten. Steve Van Basten. I mean, people who were born later, right? Van Basten, and I think Van Basten retired at 29. I think 29, 30. What an absolute! How can you win the Ballon d'Or before you're 29? And, that goal that he scored for Milan. Van Basten was absolutely just amazing. I remember being about 7 or 8 and pretending to be Van Van Basten, what a player. Absolute player. You know, Hullet as well, you know, Hullet, Rijkaard, Koeman, you know, that was a team. You know, that was an amazing team. You know, Holland, you know, Cruyff as well, but Cruyff was before my time. But Holland, you know, used to be an absolute beast of a team. You know, absolute, you know, Bergkamp as well, right? So Bergkamp, where's my thing gone? Bergkamp. I mean, you know, that goal that he scored against Argentina in the '98 World Cup, I think it was. Just where's my stream gone? Where is my stream gone? YouTube. There you go. Honestly, sometimes I don't even know what it's doing. Mitch says, look at the stats from the qualifiers. Memphis ended second after Haaland. And look, as I said before, I'm not disputing what you're saying. I think on this occasion, I know, Mitch, that we don't always agree on stuff, but on this, look, I think Memphis is a good player. Let's see what he does in the World Cup. Again, I don't always go with stats. You know, I don't always believe or go in for stats, because I think sometimes the eye test is better. You know, just like I don't believe just because England got through with, you know, the perfect points and didn't concede a goal, I don't necessarily think England are going to win the World Cup. So Mitch, we're going to see. We're going to see. A lot of people here in Netherlands disrespect him because of the attitude and stuff. I've always thought of him as a potential one of those players that I think is one of those players that I think, because of his attitude at times, I think that was, and Steve, you're right, Depay for us was absolutely dog shit. He wasn't great, but Depay for me is one of those frustrating players. I think he shows glimpses of being a fantastic player. I think as he's got older, I think he's got better, but I do think his attitude and his own aura or his own self-worth, I think it's probably higher than the talent would suggest. There is no doubt on his day he's a really, really talented player, but I just don't think he was consistent enough as a younger player. But again, you know, he's one of those players who I don't think you're necessarily gonna remember in time. But Netherlands are gonna win the World Cup. Look, again, you know, I sort of hope they do. You know, it's always nice to see. You know, being a neutral fan, being a Welsh fan, you don't always, you know, I don't have any skin in the game when it comes to, you know, winning World Cups. You know, it's always nice to see the sort of old guard, the Hollands, the England's, you know, the well, not so much the Spanish, because they win it, right? You know, France win it as well, the Germans win it, but it would be nice to see somebody different win it this year. So Mitch says Van Dijk will step up. Let's see. You know, Van Dijk is getting older now. Let's see what they'll do. Let me have a little look. I think we've gone through all of the messages. So look, Kobbie Mainoo, Weghorst will win the Golden Boot. I love that, Steve. Weghorst, brilliant. I think the Weghorst thing sums up Holland, right? I think Holland can either be great, but I don't think their bench is particularly strong, right? But look, stranger things have happened. You look at Denmark when they won the 92 Euros. They didn't even qualify. It was just because one of the teams was disqualified and they won. So who knows? Who knows? So look, I want to know about your thoughts and feelings on Kobbie Mainoo. I want to know about what you think about the club. I want to know, you know, things in the last couple of days. you know, what Nicky Butter said, you know, what's come out about the signings. I want to know all the stuff that we've not spoken about that I've missed. So let's go on to the Kobbie Mainoo stuff. So where is this coming from? This is coming from the director of football for Napoli. What's his name? I've got his name. Giovanni Manna. Chris Britt says Holland will do well to make stage 2. I can't say I really know. I mean, I don't really watch international football that much. Joe says dude's dude's facial hair is AI. People always comment on the facial hair. My beard grows absolutely just wild at times. It's either shaved and then it just goes boof. Yeah, it's just I've just got this beard that seems to spark off chat. Scott says, I think the ex players should keep their nose out of the club. They don't play the game anymore. And you know, Scott, I think that's a valid opinion. You know, I think the reason for me, I think Nicky Butt probably is an interesting one for me. Is on the basis that I think that unlike Paul Scholes, who went to Oldham, unlike a Neville who failed spectacularly, I think with Nicky Butt for me, I think it's probably a sort of different one on the basis that he was a sort of youth team coach, right? Really respected. And I think with Nicky Butt, he doesn't really comment necessarily on the team, unlike Scholes. Scholes comes back and just almost is like he's really lazy. He's really lazy in his commentary. Now, I don't know whether that's his style, but you know, I do think that some of these ex-players just don't really kind of know what they're talking about. The only thing for me, I think, that bugs me is, you know, when it comes to playing for the club. You know, the other day when that thing was put out there by the players that they don't appreciate the comments and they want some understanding. You know, I'm not going to not say anything on that on the basis that I think these players are low IQ players. You know, I think the fact that they're moaning playing for this club, I do think the old players, when they're talking about playing for this club, I think they absolutely understand what that means, and I think they have a valid argument in regard to that. But anything else, you know, I think Scott's right. I think they should keep their nose out of the team in terms of how they work. But Chris says too much stats talk in commentary. I can't stand it. I agree with you. Look, I when we talk about players on here, or when we talk about the game, and I talk about stats in relation to the game, I always take those with a pinch of salt. I'm not big on stats. I think stats will give you an indicator, right? But Chris, like, if you look at the stats against the Forest game, right? You know, I had somebody coming on here who clearly didn't see the match and was talking about, you know, how we had 23 shots on goal, you know, the possession wise, and you know, we were the better team, and the stats suggest that we're a better team. You look at the goal chances. I mean, Forest, we were absolutely terrible, but the stats sort of lie. And you know, for people, this is always my sort of observation on all this stuff, is that if you don't get to watch the match, because there are lots of people out there, you know, who can't afford it. You know, I'm very lucky that I'm in a position where I can watch the games. Yeah. Caleb, legend. Hope you're doing it extremely well, my friend. So there are lots of people who don't get to watch the match because of time, because of kids, because of the expense, and all they see are the stats. And then when other people are talking about we should be finishing fourth, we should be winning the league, they believe it because they think that we're just unfortunate. You know, if you've watched our team this season, we've only played well in 3 games. I would say. The Brighton game, I thought we played reasonably well, but we still conceded 2 goals and we still made that hard. Arsenal, I thought we were fantastic in that game. Even the wins, the Chelsea wins, they had a red card. Wolves were basically just dead on their feet. Crystal Palace, I'd argue that second half, the European exploits probably destroyed their second half. But look, Omni play was there. So the Bournemouth game is there to be taken. And I will do a review of that match as well, as we always do. Steve says we can stop talking double Dutch. Reminds me of Eric Ten Hag. Ten Hag is a better coach than Amorim, says Mitch. Too much stats talking. I agree with you. Agree, Eric Ten Hag is better at the moment because he's won 2 trophies, but Amorim will become better, in your opinion. Hey, yeah, you're back again. I think you were not right with the negative things you said about Fernandes. Mitch, again, we're going to have to agree to disagree. Again, getting your opinions, I think we're going to have to agree to disagree on that one. My stance on Fernandes is what a phenomenal player when he first came to the club. Absolute phenomenal player. I've got nothing against him, but the 18 months, the eye test doesn't lie. Bruno Fernandes, in my opinion, is a stat padder. And I'll give you an example. Crystal Palace, you got 2 assists, right? 1 for the free kick. How is that an assist? He literally just passes the ball, makes him out and hit it. Zirkzee, the ball for Zirkzee, it was an okay ball, but Zirkzee basically had to finish it off, right? Penalties he gets. Now, I find him very obstinate. He just throws his hands in the air. He's petulant. I'm not talking about his career. Now, Bruno Fernandes, his first part of his career, it's just this last part. It's just this last 12 months. You could argue. I don't like that. I want him out of this club. If we can get, he's 31 years old. He's not going to last forever. And it's not that I don't respect him, but I've actually watched him, and I can forgive him playing in the number 8 position. That isn't his fault. He's been asked to do a job. But what I expect as a captain, and maybe Mitch, you don't understand, or maybe you don't. No, I think that's a disrespectful thing to say to you, Mitch. Maybe you don't appreciate it. Maybe you don't appreciate it. Is that the captain for United is different? It's different to any other club than one. You have to be held in a different regard. He's not a captain, in my opinion. The things he does on the pitch are not great. They're not that of a captain. And I just think that right now, I think he's not a captain. And the only way you remove the captaincy from him is he needs to go. So for me, I think to restructure a team, I think we are a one-man team. Building teams around a player doesn't work. You look at Liverpool, City, Arsenal, they don't build teams around players. So I think Fernandes is the singular player. Look, I'm not disagreeing that Fernandes can do some world-class things, but Fernandes is not that player that he was. And I think somebody made the point on here, if Fernandes wasn't the captain and he was just another player, would I have the same expectation? My answer would be no, but he is the captain. So look, my only thing here is that Bruno Fernandes is not a captain. He doesn't act like a captain, and the only way to really remove that is to take the player away from that. And look, whilst we can still get 50-60 million pounds for him, I would take the money and run. Ten Hag was a con man. He filled United full of cheap Dutch crap, which is why he got sacked at Leverkusen, using a dodgy Dutch player recruitment company, which is why our team is so bad today. Mateta would be perfect striker for United. I do agree. Very good holding the ball and distributing to teammates. As much as I like Casemiro, we need legs in the CDM. And look, you make a great point. Mateta, I'd be all over that deal. I really like him. Mateta would be a Fergie signing. Mateta would definitely be that sort of Ferguson sign. And look, I don't necessarily like harking back to the past, but those are the signings that do well. And I think having a Mateta and a Šeško, I think would work fantastically well. And look, Casemiro this season, he's had a bit of a renaissance this season. All I'm going to say about that is Casemiro is the best of a bad bunch, right? If you put Casemiro in any of the top 4 teams, he will look absolutely ordinary. The reason why he looks so good this season is basically because the crap that we've got in there. Chris says, I would like to have seen Southgate as manager. Mate, and again, look, these are people's opinions. I absolutely no issue with it. For me, if you want mid-table football, if you want favourites, Amorim is a favourites guy. I'm not a massive fan of that. And you look at that, he would be a favourites sort of guy. He wouldn't build a team on who's playing well. Amorim is pretty much the same. If you look at all the best coaches out there who are agnostic when it comes to players, and what I mean is they only play the players, or they play the players that are playing the best. Sometimes you're forced into playing players, but I would prefer a coach who is not these players' mates. Fergie wasn't these players' mates. Arteta isn't these players' mates. Pep certainly isn't. So I want a manager who's not going to, give them a high five, slap them on the butt, be like, oh, you guys are great. I need a manager who wants more than that, but also he doesn't have favourites as well. Mitch says, you're right, but the players he wanted just don't work out in the Premier League, and it was United that wanted to overpay for Anthony and others. Yeah, the Mount ball Bruno was the Mount ball by Bruno was awesome. Not the free kick one. Yeah, no, I see what you mean. Like, and I'm not going to dispute, Bobby. I'm not going to Mark. Sorry, I'm not going to dispute that. There are things that Bruno Fernandes can do and see, but I need to see it against bigger teams. What do you think about Ramos rumours? I like to. My only thing on that is this: what is Ramos going to do? Now, I wouldn't mind Sergio Ramos as almost a, not a back room, but almost as that sort of player that you bring in, you bring him in, basically he's going to play the sort of odd game, but he's not a starter. Now, what's Ramos going to do? Ramos is 39 years old, and you're going to want a 39-year-old defender to play in the Premier League. I mean, if Ramos was 35, no issue. But what's a 39? I agree with the work ethic. I agree with the mentality, elite. But you can't just get one. You need 4 or 5. And I think Ramos, for me, if Ramos was only 35 years old, like a Laurent Blanc, right? I'm not opposed to it, but a 39, and he's going to want a payday. For me, look, I like the idea, but not a 39. Mitch says, make De Ligt the captain. He needs to be ready for the World Cup. Mitch, agree. I would love De Ligt as captain. He's good at banana free kicks. Dino, we beat bottom of the league 4-1. I want to see us do that against Everton, Villa, Spurs, teams in and around us. And Dino, I think Dino, that is probably, for me, that is the crux of it, right? Bournemouth. If we can do that to a Bournemouth, fantastic. If we can go, look, we can go to Aston Villa. Aston Villa, don't sleep on Aston Villa. Aston Villa haven't lost at home for 30 odd games, right? Their record at home, as they proved, their record at home is second to none. I think they're probably first or second for no losses at home. If we walk away with a win from Villa, that shows me that this team can change around. But the problem with that is they've done it before. So I think, Dino, for me to start to trust in this team, that we need to be winning games. And like I've said before, is that the problem is that because of the results that we've had, if we'd have won those games, we could have gone to Villa and we could have got a draw. Newcastle could have come to us and we could have got a draw, because we'd already got those points. And for me, those games for me were either going to be a loss or a draw, which I don't like to predict. But now, because of our poor form, we now have to go to these grounds and we have to win. So if we beat Bournemouth, we beat Villa, Newcastle, if we do that, be prepared for Arsenal, because you've got Arsenal away, City at home. If we can get wins before those games, look, the conversation then has to be had about, top six, top four. And then if you then go to Arsenal and you beat them, and City come and you beat them, then at that point, I go, maybe this team has turned the corner, but I don't see a 4-1 against Wolves as a turning point at all. What do you think, Glasgow to United? It's a difficult one for me. I think it makes sense in terms of the formation, in terms of the way that he wants to play. But I think for me, what I need at this club is I need an elite manager. I think that is a good point. But I think what I want to see is look, if this club is not going to back a manager, let's just say this club is going to keep the likes of a Luke Shaw and extend the contract. If this club is going to keep Casemiro for the next year, if this club is not going to invest in a coach, just go and get a Southgate. Go and get somebody in who can manage these players. Go and get somebody in that can go to a back four, play a three. But then what will happen is one or two things. If we get a coach like a Southgate, or you bring in a Fletcher, because there's rumours that Fletcher behind the scenes is being primed to be a coach, right? If you bring in those sorts of coaches, and bearing in mind these players have always played a 4-4-3 other than now, we will be complaining again. You bring in a Glasner. Glasner's going to play the same sort of football, and we'll probably be complaining. It's until we get rid of some of these players, until we change the toxicity at this club, I don't even think it really matters who we bring in, on the basis that until the club's mentality changes. Now, if Amorim goes, Glasner, I'm not adverse to that, but I think as a club we need to be realistic. Because if he's not backed, I guarantee we will be here again in 18 months' time. Sashan says, hi, hello, my friend. Mitch says, Foden, Saka and Palmer. Chris says, we are United going to finish this season. Chris, I've predicted so far, I think we'll finish between 8th and 10th. That's been my prediction all season, because I think that whilst we got the wage bill and we've got the players on paper to finish top 4. I demand, Chris, that we win the league every season. I demand we're in Champions League. We're not going to do it. I'm not done. It's just because I want the standards high. We've got a team that finished 15th last season. We've got the majority of those players still here. We're going to go to AFCON. We're inconsistent. I think we have this conversation again when we get to the end of next month. if we're there and about, the one thing as well is to really think about the season is the competitiveness. The first team that gets consistency, I think, will finish in that top 4 or 5. So look, I'm still right now adamant that we're going to finish 8th to 10th, but look, that could change. Sorry to say this, but this is the worst United side in years. All the fundamentals of the club is built on unrecognisable on the pitch. Steve, I agree with you. Ramos at 30, no problem. Why do we always go for players that are way past their prime? United should bring in Rashford from loan spell. I think he would cook under Amorim. And look, Rashford, Chris says, yeah, bring Rashford back. He wants to come back. I don't think he does. I don't think Rashford does. Where would Rashford play? We don't play. Rashford is not a 10. Rashford isn't a 9. If we could get, I watched Rashford play for Barcelona in the Champions League. I mean, the cross he put in was phenomenal. Now, if we could get that Rashford back, and that Rashford fell in love with this club again, I'd have no problems in bringing him back. But I don't see where Rashford plays. Rashford is a wide player. Rashford is a wide forward. He's a winger type of player. Amorim doesn't play that way. So the only way Rashford is going to come back is as a wing back. And I don't think he suits that position. There are many situations where I think Rashford could come back. I don't think he wants to. And I would be intrigued as to where Amorim would actually play him. So look, we're talking about Kobbie Mainoo here, right? So I will go through that as well. But if we're talking about players like Kobbie Mainoo, I think Rashford falls into that. Amorim doesn't rate him. Amorim has got no place for him in this team. So I think, sadly, whether or not Rashford, as you put it, is cooking, whether you think Rashford is a worthy player now, I just don't think Amorim wants him here. Scott says, keep Rashford away from the club. We should trust in Ruben. He's trying his best to bring United back. I miss CR7, Messi, Neymar were in their prime. Them days are gone. Yeah, I'm not bothered about Rashford. To be honest, I'd take him back. This is Fletcher. Just more faces from the past to defend the real. Look, this club, as you've all said, look, I am managering. I want Ruben to survive. I want him. I want to stick with him. I'm still not happy. I'm not Amorim in without concerns. I'm Amorim in without the provisos. I don't like the favourites. I think he gets schooled. I think he's learning on the job. I don't think these players respect him. He's picking these. It seems to be these players can do whatever they like, say whatever they like, and Amorim can't do a damn thing about it. But I want him to survive. I want us to do something different. Because I think the alternative is, I think what people need to realise here is this. If Amorim fails, who do they bring in? I think Fletcher comes in. I think an ex-player. Chris says, do you play Football Manager on the computer? I used to. I don't have time for it now, but I did used to play it for quite some time. But I think we need to be. European football is a must this season. I think we do on here, but I think outside, I think people don't realise the importance of European football this season. When the new squad cost comes in next season, right? So when the squad cost comes in next season, do you want Rashford back? No, Kev. No. I don't want him back. When the squad cost comes in next season, we've actually got an opportunity here for Ineos and the Glazers to pump some money in to this club. So European football next season wouldn't be an issue if we had owners who would pump money into this club. We don't have that. Did you get your team relegated? I didn't actually. No, my teams always did well. I got to the Premier League with West Brom, and I got them into a European competition. That's all I'm saying. Keep Rashford away. The ex United pundit is always kind of responsible for United's downfall. They always bash their own players, not giving them any chance, resulting in disagreement with the players just for the views. I semi agree with that, but look, the not quite a statement, but the rhetoric piece last week was this. This is my caveat. This is my counter to what you said. Again, that's your view. I'm not going to disrespect your view. Whilst I semi agree with it, my caveat is this: whilst these ex players are commenting on the internal workings of the club, right? And I do agree that they should semi support them now. The caveat to that for me is when these players are criticising, these players don't know what it is to play for this club, and they watch the performances of these players on the field. These are players that have played this. These are players that have worn this shirt. Like, are you guys telling me that any of the? And again, this is a question: are any of our current squad worthy of those kits behind me? Are they worthy of that red kit there? Are they worthy of that kit there? I've got some kits over there as well. Are they worthy of those shirts? And my answer to that would be no. These are low IQ, low mentality players. Scholesy, Butt, Keane, Beckham, those were true quality players. Those were high mentality. Even Quinton Fortune, even O'Shea, even Javier Hernandez, Sheringham, McClare, Hughes. We don't have those players. So these players have been there. They've done it. These players should listen and stop moaning and complaining when these ex-players are talking about what it means to play for the club and how they're playing on the pitch, because they know. The other side to that is, when they're trashing players just for the sake of it, I don't agree with that. I think any criticism that they give to players should be constructive. You had what's his name? The Watford striker, Deeney. Right, let me give you an example. Deeney's not even part of this club, and he says he pisses stronger than Shesko, and I'm like, that is basically for clicks, right? Am I Indian? No. And he's saying, he pisses stronger than a Shesko. Deeney wasn't a prolific striker. And I see these ex-players like a striker. And I'm just like, Deeney, why don't you go and help him? Why don't you call him up and just say, look, this is how you play in the Premier League. This is what I would do if I was you. And these ex-players, again, instead of criticising them in a way, as you say, for clicks, give these players a call and say, look, let me give you some advice. Don't do it through the media. Have private conversations with these players and tell them what it means to play for the club. Have these conversations. And there seems to be this battle whereby ex-players, I think, get frustrated at times because they know what it's like. And you've got these look, whether we like it or not, these players that we've got now, low mentality, low IQ players, again, toxicity within the club. Look, I think it all streams from the Glazers, and we just bought the wrong types of players. We went for the Pogbas, we went for those sorts of players. And all they wanted to do was dance and piss around. Whilst that's fine, but we needed more than that. So, I think it's an interesting debate. I really, really do, about ex-players and current players. I do. I think it's a really interesting debate. So look, I'll get through your chats and then we'll go through the Kobbie Mainoo stuff. Steve says, I agree with the ex-player comments because they know what standards at the club when they were winning. Chris says 4-4-2 is the United way. Look, Chris, mate, I love a 4-4-2. I'd play a hybrid of a 4-4-2, but then again, I'm old school, right? Now I'd love to see a hybrid of a 4-4-2 come back, but I'm an old school guy. United guy, I also said that Depay ended second in the qualifiers with goals and assists after Haaland, because that's very impressive, I think. I mean, when you're playing Gibraltar, Liechtenstein, no disrespect, like Albania, those sorts of teams, and I'm not saying that that's what they played against. All I'm saying is that international football is not very good. If you look at the other plays they played in, Steve says, I remember Wes Brown's debut and the levels were so high. Anything below that and you were back in the youth team. Steve, agree completely. Hi man, how are you? Missed you last night. CR7, yeah mate, I was out. And again, look, I'd love this to be my full-time job, but sadly, I've got work and commitments to do. But look, I do try to do this around work, and that's why I'm doing this show today. And then I'll do a show tonight as well. Dina says, if the current squad has been successful as the legends, then fair play. Tell the legends to shut up. But when they haven't done anything, they should take on board what they say. I do agree. Zirkzee's rubbish as always. Zirkzee got 1 goal and he's still not the solution. I hope De Ligt is fine in the coming game and Šeško too. Look, let's switch around and let's have the Zirkzee debate as well now, right? So there is news coming out. So there was news yesterday that Zirkzee wants to fight for his place again. And then today there is rhetoric coming out that Zirkzee, in fact, actually will probably move. So again, I'm not going to go too much over the next couple of days on this. I'm going to report it once, and then we can talk about that news. This is why sometimes I find it difficult to do streams every single day, because look, I'm not gonna bombard you guys with stuff that is just clickbait crap, right? So Zirkzee, for me, look, there is a point here to be made. So these are my questions, right? That I'd ask you guys, I'd ask anybody, right? So Zirkzee, if he stays, right? What is Zirkzee? Is he a number 10? Can he play as a number 9? Is he a hybrid of the two? What will he do when he's here? What will he do? What's the target? I'd even put him as 4th choice, right? So he's not going to play as 10, or he could play as a 9. Mason Mount's Šeško's like there in terms of a 9. I'd even argue Mount, Cunha, etc. is like ahead of him there. Ahmad is ahead of him there. In Bumo is there as well. So he's probably 5th choice. So, and I think the reason why this is what I sort of now think on the Zirkzee thing is, I admire the fact that he wants to stay, and I do think he wants to stay to fight for his place. But what's the point? Like, I don't see the point. Whilst I do agree that we need him while the AFCON is on, and I think something could happen at the end of the window. I don't think it will. I'm still adamant, and I'll give you my opinion on that as well. Is once that's finished, if everybody's fit, what does he do? He's going to lose value. What's that? While he sat on the bench, where does he play? Like, where does he play? Unless somebody is injured, where does Zirkzee play? It's a World Cup year. Whilst I agree he signed a contract, he has signed a contract. right? So, but again, what I do admire about him, and we need more players, is like he came into the club after 6 weeks. The lad was being called out completely. I was never a fan of that. I absolutely detested it. Absolutely detest that a player who's never played in the Premier League before, a young player who hasn't got a run of games, is what was being called out. Where was the sympathy, right? And then he decided to stay. He had a really good end to the season. I liked what he did. He stayed and fought for his place. Hasn't played games. Hasn't moaned. Hasn't whinged. Hasn't bitched. Hasn't put anything out there. And that's the same as Kobbie Mainoo as well. Hasn't moaned, whinged, bitch. Whenever he's asked to come on, he plays. I think the only thing he's asking behind the scenes is, look, let me play. Let him play. If Zirkzee is not going to play, I don't see the point in Zirkzee, because I see the point in Zirkzee now. Let him go. I think once the AFCON is over, if there's time, let Zirkzee go. Bring in somebody else on loan. I don't know who that would be, by the way, but try to bring in another player. If he's not going to play, Mitch is bring. And Mitch, there are lots of Serie A teams who want him because they know what his stock is high there. His stock is very, very high there, and I think he would do well. I think he's a tall guy. I think in Italy, I think he would do extremely well. Roma won him. AC Milan, I think, have been touted for him as well. Look, there are players that just don't work out at this club, right? It's not their fault necessarily. I don't blame Zirkzee. I don't blame him. He's one of those players that was signed by the last coach. You bring in a new coach that plays a completely different way, and as you said, Mitch, I don't think he's good enough for the Premier League. I just don't think he is good enough. But again, how many players have we said that about? So it's difficult for me with players right now. Steve says, look, our standard levels have been lowered so low that we have these discussions of keeping crap players who shouldn't be anywhere near this side, or shall we give Coffin Dodgers some new contracts? Steve, mate, I think you're spot on. I do think you're spot on. Dina says Zirkzee was a massive misstep. Whoever brought his name to the table, he's a championship player at best. And these are valid comments. I think the reason why we went for him is because I think he was a gettable cheap deal. No, I think AC Milan, I think he was touted to go there. I would rather him have gone there. Paul says, morning, mate. Early starter. Look, I this week has been manic. I do try to do 2 shows a day. I kind of do I typically do a morning afternoon show, and then I do an evening show as well. That's what I did for a couple of weeks, and then work because I've got a full-time job as well. Sadly, I sort of have to work around that as well. But whilst I've got time, I do try to do 2 streams a day. Scott says that Shesko back next week. I don't know if he's ready for the Bournemouth game, is he? He could be, but I'm not too sure on that. But look, Zirkzee, I think one of the final things to say to him, is I don't think he's good enough for the Premier League. I think he's an average player that I think we need to move. Chris says also United should only sign players who have a strong desire to play for them. I agree, but the problem with that, Chris, is for me is you're going to have these players who want to play for the club, which I agree to a degree. But Roy Keane, let's give you Roy Keane. Best example, Roy Keane is a Spurs fan, and yes, we're never going to sign another Roy Keane. I think we need a mixture, Chris, I do agree with you to a point. Is that I think we need these Mainoo, Kobbie Mainoo. I think we need these young players, and what I like about him is he doesn't moan, doesn't whinge, and he's a United fan. He come up through the academy. We need those players. We also need players who are just good players. And again, we do also need players that want to come and play for the club that are not here for the payday. I do think we'll see that more, Chris. I do think we will, because the wages are now lower. I don't think we're going to see the likes of a 300k a week once those contracts are done. So we are going to see, I do think, players who will want to play for the club, like Shesko. I think I think Shesko will take time, but I think once he fires, he's not a fan. But I think that Shesko will fire. So what we need is I don't necessarily think we need players who want to play for the club. I think we need players who are respectful of who they play for, but they want to be the best. They could play for any club in the world. It doesn't matter. Whilst they're at that club, they want to play football. They are winners. They don't necessarily care about the club. They are winners. They want to win stuff. Their mentality is elite. I want a bunch of those players. Lipidata says, hello, sir. Hello. Hope you're doing extremely well. Dino says, a cheap deal that was linked to AC Milan. So the board were like, he must be good. Let's get him. Yeah, but the management from AC Milan is not stupid to overpay. Mitch, it was the agent fees, right? You're right. AC Milan weren't stupid enough to pay for the agent fee, so I don't disagree with you on that one. Dean says, imagine a player with a mix of Scholes and Keane, a world beater. Yeah, and again, what I'm just going to have a little bit of a whinge and a moan and a bitch now. So Mainoo. We'll get on to the Mainoo stuff as well. So look, Mainoo, apparently there's been a Giovanni Manna, the director of football for Napoli, has been talking and directly asked about Kobbie Mainoo, and he's basically said this: we will make the right valuation. A player linked to Napoli since August, also for his age, and we're going to be looking at players' age and his potential and the opportunity for transfer. We are doing well, and we need to consolidate. We have some important players that are out right now. We have to make the right evaluation, so we have this in progress. Scott says, Valverde for Mr. Chris. Chris says, if you could sign any player in the world, who would you sign? I think that's really difficult question, Chris. I think it's a great question. I do. I think it's a fantastic question. Valverde, possibly. Who's going to come into this side who brings a elite mentality? I'd want to bring in a player who is captain material, who's a winner, who's not scared to shout at these players. So you are talking somebody like a Valverde. Anderson, would he fit that? I don't know. Probably a Rice, a Casido. I think for me, Casido. I think we need that defensive capability. I don't know necessarily Casido what he's like in terms of. I know he's a great player, but we need that leader type. So Valverde for me, maybe Casido, maybe a Declan Rice. I think he'd be a great player. I think we need a midfield. I want a Roy Keane type. I want somebody who can come in to this team and is not afraid to raise standards. He's not afraid to tell Fernandes to shut the fuck up. He's not scared to lead by example. You don't really get those players now. So those are the players that I really want to see, are those players who are going to come into this side and really make a difference, really. Andrew Kelly says, Everton fan here in peace. In peace, I think Mainoo would be good replacement for Garner in the summer. If he was interested in joining, please wouldn't Zirkzee, though bad having Beto and Barry. Andrew, I will recognise the name, my friend. Everton fan, look, welcome, my friend. Rival fans are always welcome here. I think Mainoo, and I'm bringing us into here as well. I'm going to bring us into here. I'll bring Brighton into this conversation as well. I'll bring a couple of other teams in here. I think if Mainoo wasn't a United player, I think he would have higher aspirations, and this is no disrespect. He'd have higher aspirations than us. He'd have higher aspirations than you. I think Mainoo wants to go and play for a City. I think Mainoo wants to go and play for a Bayern Munich. Now, I think whilst I agree with you, I think he would get game time. I think if he was loaned out, I think Everton would be a great place for him. I think Brighton would be a good place for him. But I think in the long term, I think his aspirations are higher than us. I think his aspirations are to play for a Champions League club. So if Everton could get into the Champions League, maybe. But I think he's got aspirations for that Barcelona's, Real Madrid's, Bayern's. I don't even think, if he wasn't our player, I think he loves the club. If it wasn't for that, I don't think we'd get anywhere near him. Gallagher fits your description too. I think Gallagher, I've said this since September. I don't think we do any business. I think we get Gallagher on loan or buy. And I think that's the only thing that we do. Valverde with Boston midfield. He'll give the peace of mind to the other players. Here we go. Mbappe on loan until the end of the season, says Steve. Peace out, says Chris. If Kobbie wasn't a United player, we would buy him for 60 to 70. Grace, legend of the chat. If we had 70 million in buying Anderson, Wharton, or Baleba over Mainoo. Now, I think what you could do, I think you could do a try to buy. You could do a Baleba comes here on a loan option to buy, and then Mainoo goes to Brighton. I think Brighton would be the perfect place for him. I think Brighton would be the perfect place for him to go. It says, JB, what team do you think Mainoo would suit best? City, Arsenal, or Liverpool? I think City, in the way that City play, because City really like that close control. City, like to play in and around that box, and I think that's Mainoo's best position. I think Mainoo for me would, because he's that hybrid of a sort of number 10 and a CM. I think, and so Grace is right. I think at the moment he wouldn't start, but I think that for City, I think he would probably be the best because you've got that Foden, and I think Mainoo would do really well taking the ball off of taking that ball off of the centre midfielders and running with it and progressing with that ball. So I think City, Arsenal. Look, he's not getting into any of those teams, right? Grace says Mainoo wouldn't start for Napoli. I think he would right now because Napoli have some long-termers out, right? So I think he would, Grace, but it's just in the long term, is he good enough? Could he play? I think if Mainoo gets back to that potential and that player that he was when he went to the Euros, I think he would start. But I think you're right. He would need to prove himself. Scott says, I can see him up playing for Munich or Dortmund. I can see it as well. I can see him playing for a Munich. I think, no disrespects to the German league, I think Bayern would suit him down to the ground. Dortmund as well, because they're very, very good. So I'll be saying that Mainoo is a 10. I think Mainoo Is Mainoo a 10? I don't think it's difficult. It's difficult. I don't think he's a box to box. I don't think he's a number 10. I think he's more of a. I think Mainoo is more of a. If you're playing a diamond, I think he's the spearhead. So I think he's that one that picks up the ball and he drives. And I think you have two midfielders that can cover him. And then he plays at the point. So he's almost like a combination of an 8 and a 10. Whether he goes back to being an 8 or a 10, I don't know. But I think he's that sort of spearhead, advanced 8 in front of a double pivot. Exactly, Grace. Exactly. That's what I think he is. I think you've got the two centre midfielders there who are box to box. Maybe one is more defensive, and he just sits in there, and you give him the ball. I know Dino pivot, right? Let's have a look. Jamie Vargas says, good morning from Texas. JB for 60. If we sell him, Jamie Vargas, legend of the chat. I hope you're doing extremely, extremely well. Rob James says he'll go to Newcastle or somebody like Everton. He won't be going abroad if you want an England place. Newcastle, Newcastle could be the one as well, Rob James. I at times maybe, I sort of not misjudge him, but I think Newcastle, Rob James, I think you're right. Those sorts of players, almost resurrect their careers, right? And if he went to a Newcastle, I think they'd adore him up there. I think he'd get game time. It really depends on what Newcastle are going to do with those midfield plays. You've got Tonali, Gameresh, Linton. If he went to Newcastle at this point in time, I think he'd only go there if they were going to sell any of those players. But yeah, this manager destroys youth talent. Last year, Kone. This year, Gabriel Lacey sat on the bench, not getting a second. Gabriel is not old enough. Gabriel is not old enough to play in the Premier League yet. I think it's because he turned 15 after the start of the season. I think he's only able to play Premier League football if he turns 15 before the start of the season. So I'm not classing that. Shea Lacey, Shea Lacey, would he do as bad as some of the players that we've got now? And Steve, you can only go, Steve, by what you've seen right now, right? I don't think it's just Amorim that destroys youth. I think this club does. I think there's no pathway right now from the and what I mean by that is there's no realistic pathway from the youth to the first team. And Steve, I would have said maybe last year. I don't agree with you, but you can only go by what you see, and I'm starting to agree with you. Amorim doesn't seem to like youth players. He doesn't trust them. So it would seemingly be that is it because of survival, Steve? Is it because he's trying to survive? If it is, then maybe next season these players get game time. But right now, Amorim is showing that he doesn't trust the youth. And Kone, for me, look, Kone is one of those players that we don't know. I think there has to be a pathway, Steve. But look, I'm starting to agree with you. We can only go by what we've seen of this coach, and Amorim right now does have his favourites. And I don't agree with that. Oman says Australia 2-0 up. Advanced, yeah, he's a bit of an in-between. He's an 8. He's an 8.5. Rob James, he's not going abroad. The World Cup is around the corner. Rob, I don't think he gets. I don't think he gets into the England team unless Kobbie Mainoo, as you say, unless Kobbie Mainoo goes and he can get a move to a Premier League team. and he has a blinding second half of the season, I don't think he goes to the World Cup. And I think if he doesn't go to the World Cup, I think he leaves the club, because I think he will blame Amorim. I think he will blame the club, and I think that will be over. And I think that it will just be so sad, because I look at Anderson and Baleba as an 8. Mainoo isn't like them. I do agree with you. Dina says it maybe Amorim doesn't fancy him as a player. I'm not quite sure what position he is. Rob says United still need a couple more transfer windows before challenging. I've got to give him some more time in charge. Rob, mate, I think it's valid, mate. I've been Amorim in, the manager in, all season since Grimsby. There has been no time have I really been Amorim. Now I've been. Look, I am Amorim disappointed. I'm Amorim disappointed in the weakness that he shows. I do say this, that Amorim has said he's going to change this team around. He hasn't, and I'm disappointed in the way that he makes the substitutions. The performances haven't been great. The substitutions in game haven't been great. But I've always said this. Even though he's been given players, they are not his players, and he needs some windows. But for me, Amorim needs to realise that he needs to play, and he needs to play football that's going to get him to look, whether or not Amorim likes this. He needs to use these players in a way that's going to get him to the end of the season. These players have used coaches. Amorim needs to play these players at their own game. Pretend to be their friend, right? Pretend to be their mates. Pretend that they are the best players in the world. These players need coaches to tell them how fantastic they are. Do that until the end of the season, and then bin them. Make these players feel good. Make these players feel like they've got a future. Not all players, but play them like they're his best mate, and then bin them all off. Just bin them. Like make these players think that they're his best mates. But as we all know, United can't just bin these players. There was a couple of weeks ago when you had people out there saying, "Oh, we're going to get rid of 10 players. It's going to be a massive clear out. We're going to get rid of 10 players." How? No one's going to buy Shaw. His contract's till 2027. Who's going to buy Luke Shaw? Mason Mount. Who's going to buy Mason Mount? Whether or not people think he's great or not, injury prone, long term, the future is not bright. Contract till 2027. Who's going to buy him? Zirkzee, contract till 2028. Ugarte right now is absolute dog shit. Who's going to buy him? Contract till 2028. We've only got 3 or 4 players that are going to go on a free. Rashford could come back. If there's nobody who wants to sign him, contract till 2028 as well. Højlund hasn't been sold. Sancho will go. Casemiro can go. Maguire can go. And what I mean is, doesn't matter if I want them to stay. Their contracts are up. So there's only 3 or 4 players that can leave. So this whole thing about players that can leave, but we do need some more windows. Guy says, I think he would work in Villa as well. Newcastle have like 6 midfielders. So what's your formation and lineup with Mainoo then? Is there a formation that suits our whole team perfectly? I think Grace. I think you have to go. I think you have to go a version of 4-3-3. I don't agree with it. I don't agree with it at all. Or what you do is the problem is that we are stacked with 10s. I don't think that with this team and with Mainoo in there, unless we drop one of the number 10s into a midfield three, I don't see how this works. Because, and even if we go to a 4-3-3, we don't have wingers really. We've only maybe got one. Ahmad could play on the wing. And Boomer could possibly play on the wing as well. But if they get injured, there's no other wingers. So Grace, I think right now, because of the structure in this team, I think we're forced into playing back three. Andrew Kelly says, United have been linked to Branthwaite in the last few months. Me as Blue Nose, he would be a fantastic buy. Defender who gets on the ball and has the pace to be, and it would be a huge loss. I don't disagree. I mean, look, it's been interesting that there's been no news. There's been no spin on it. I've been really surprised, actually. I like him. I do. I've not really heard anything or really sort of seen anything. So, would we test the water, Andrew? I don't know how much he'd be. I do like him as a player. Let's see. 4-1-2-1 would be sweet. Amorim is gutless youth. With the youth, like his in-game management, I do agree with that. 4-4-2, Darman needs to play quality wing backs. 4-1, 2 wingers, 1 cam and 2 forwards. I'm off people. Go to watch my daughter Xmas play. Dino, good luck, my friend. Hope you are. Hope it's a good show. That's not 4-4-2. It's 4-1-2-1. Yeah, you guys have the argument. Vigo says, hi bro, hello, I hope you're doing extremely well, Vigo. Whatever formation fits Bruno and Delo, because he's never going to drop them. I think that's a very, very valid opinion. 4-3-3 with our midfield. Look, I don't even necessarily agree with that. I mean, Amorim is not going to be dissuaded. Cunha and Mbeumo both need a wing back to overlap because they're inverted. Agree completely. So look, let's get on to the sort of Kobbie Mainoo thing again. So look, I'll go through it all. So basically, Gianni Manna, sports director of football for Napoli, again, as we say there, he was asked a direct question on Kobbie Mainoo, and he basically said, he's a player that we're linked to since August. Also, for his age and potential and the transfer opportunity. This is doing well. We are looking to consolidate. We have some important players out. We have to evaluate. We have to make the right evaluation. So we will have this to progress. So there is a Nikarutsu legend. Good afternoon. Sorry, I'm not Nikarutsu, mate. To be fair, my streams are very inconsistent right now around work. So it's apologies from me. There's also a Italian report from Luca Cercacino. I think his name is. So Mainoo apparently is set to join long-term Napoli. This is not on loan. One source claiming that the deal is 99% done. This is a sell and not a loan. Sources say that Amorim will only be on board if United provide him a replacement. Chelsea, and I think we need to be clear on this now, Chelsea are looking for a midfielder because Lavia is out long term. They're looking at Wharton and Anderson. And look, Chelsea will do it. Chelsea will happily go out and pay £100 million. I don't think they do it for a Mainoo. But, don't be surprised if Chelsea come in for him. I don't necessarily know what they would do with another youth player. But, Chelsea are looking at a Wharton. Chelsea are looking at an Anderson to bring in in this window. And this is what progressive clubs do. You know, imagine if we sold Mainoo, right? Kobbie Mainoo goes, and let's just say he goes to like a Napoli, right? And then Chelsea go and bring in and Walton. Like it would just go to show. It would just go to show what this club is. Johnny says the Gallagher stuff. It seems we're going back to letting the managers buy the players, which is a completely wrong thing to do. Yep. Nikaruchi says wouldn't be bad idea to loan Mainoo if we aren't going to use him, so we can get some valuable experience. Good afternoon to you, says Simon. Sorry, I'm late. What have I missed? Look, we're basically in a nutshell. Zirkzee looking, Zirkzee potentially going and staying, and we were going through the pluses and the minuses for that. Kobbie Mainoo. There are varying reports saying that Napoli have come into him, basically saying that it's 99% done and it's going to be a permanent deal. But again, those are Italian outlets. Chelsea are looking for a midfielder, as we spoke about the sort of like the other day with Nicky Butt and Scholes saying that Chelsea are looking at him, and if they were them, if they were him, they would go. That Lavia is out injured, so I guess that's where that's coming from as well. And Chelsea are looking at Adam Walton and an Anderson, because that is what they do. Let's get into what some of you are saying about Kobbie Mainoo. Done up from Grace. Johnny Hill says the one thing I liked about Ineos early on is that they did what other big clubs do, is sign players for the club rather than specific manager. With the selling Mainoo, I'm getting the Gallagher stuff. Wouldn't be a bad idea to loan Mainoo if we're using him so we can get a valuable experience. Good afternoon. Yeah, I said afternoon. However, we are really lacking the midfielder creativity, so bringing two experienced midfielders and put Bruno back in his 10 role. May as well part X Kobe for Baleba. His treatment of Mainoo is going to bite him in the ass, as well as because if he thought Mainoo was good now, he's going to go and learn off a legend in De Bruyne and under a manager that's a winner. I think Zirkzee should listen to Clash. Should I stay or should I go, Simon? I love that big news from Jacobs. What's he saying, Scott? Give us an update, my friend. What is Ben saying right now? We have to rely on Zirkzee, as Mbeumo is going to the AFCON, and I don't know when Shasko is returning. Zirkzee may as well go, as he's like the kid looking through the window. Amorim clearly doesn't rate him. I agree. Look, I think the Kobbie Mainoo debate is fantastic. Who's your top three signings we should get, and top three to go? Top three to go for me: Bruno Fernandes, Luke Shaw, and a Delo. I think those three for me are the top three to go. And then I'd like to go and get a Nunes from PSG, Anderson for me, and a Valverde. Those three would be the ones that I think I would look to get. If we let go of players, we need replacement squads already at bone. It's not come up yet. I just got a notification saying Jacobs big news. Again, I'll bring that into the show. Kevin McGee, legend, says get rid of Mainoo. He's had his chances last season and did nothing with it. He's an average player that's had some good some moments. Might be on the United stand. Yeah, Scott, feel free to give it a watch and let me know. Rob James says, is the new stadium rebuild happening? You reckon it will go through? So Rob, we can go through that in a second, and I'll give you my opinion on that. I don't know if Mainoo would fit in at Chelsea. I think Napoli would definitely be the right choice. Get rid of Bruno before Casemiro is madness. Now, Kevin, the reason why I say that is because Casemiro's going anyway. I'm not classing because I'm not classing players who were going already. Because look, Kevin, I'd get rid of before Fernandes. I would get rid of, and I'll tell you my reason why I would get rid of Fernandes as well. But if I was going to get rid of players first, I'd get rid of Sancho, Casemiro first, because those players, they're going to go right now. If Bruno was going to be a 10 and play as a 10, keep him. Like, I've got no problem. I want Bruno Fernandes to play in that 10 role. Now, the main reason I think he needs to go is because he's not a captain, and the only way you're going to get the captaincy away from him is if he leaves, and we need the captaincy to go to somebody else. So for me, whilst Bruno Fernandes at times is a fantastic player, but I think for what we need and for what the rebuild will take, we need to stop building teams around a player. Bruno Fernandes needs to go, in my view, because the captaincy needs to go to a different player. And I think we need to. I think whilst he's there, everything goes to him. So, look, this is not about talent. This is not about what he can bring to the side as a 10. This is more about long term. This is more about if we can get a price for him now. And I think for me, this is more. This is bigger. This is not just about how he plays. People go back to the past. Fernandes has been fantastic player. I think we need to do something different. I will come back onto the stadium. It could just be going on there. He's always on the United stand. Okay, got you. So how do we replace his output? And Kevin, the point is you don't replace him. If you look at, and this is my argument, Kevin, here, right, is that if you look at all of the top teams, and I'm talking about City, I'm talking about Arsenal, I'm talking about Aston Villa, Chelsea, Barcelona, so Bayern Munich, they don't build teams around play. And look, City, you could argue they build a team around Haaland. They don't. The top teams don't build. They don't build their teams around a single player. And we're building a team around Fernandes. We don't build it. Look, we need to build a team. Right now, Fernandes is that focal point of the team. If Bruno is willing to be part of a team and just be a cog in the team, keep him there. Keep him as a 10. If Bruno Fernandes is willing not to be the captain, if Bruno Fernandes is just willing to be a part member of a whole team, keep him. But he's not. Mainoo will struggle to get into Chelsea B team at the moment. With our budget, our stadium might as well be made of Lego bricks. Probably struggle. He would have a hope of getting into Chelsea's team. He's playing Bruno in and out because there's no one else. How would you sell Sancho and Casemiro? They're going. Simon, they're going for free. So we're not going to sell him. Sancho goes, his contract's up. Casemiro is gone as well. Steve says, Valverde, Mendes, give us a drag of what you're smoking. We've sacked half of the workforce to save money. That's why we're chasing games. You look at the bench and see there's nothing. And Steve, mate, I'm not saying that we're going to get them. The question was, who would I get? I'm not talking about a realistic. They're not realistic targets, but those who I would get. Captaincy can be moved just like it was with Maguire. It won't be. It won't be. Bruno Fernandes will not stay at this club if that's removed from him. If he does, happy days. I am happy with that. I don't think that you can remove Bruno Fernandes as a captain without him leaving the club. De Ligt is my choice of captain. All Bruno's qualities are in the final third. Amorim playing Bruno in the 8 had further to prove Bruno in the 10. Spot on JB, we can't build a team around Fernandes and may as well sell him while we can get some money. I didn't say replace him, I said replace his output. Look, Kevin, you can't replace him without replacing his output. You know, you can't replace him. You can't do the two things. You can't replace his output without replacing him. But if you're going to replace his output, you don't replace his output. You build a team around him, and you distribute the output between other members of a team. So you don't, and that's my point here, is that you don't replace the output. The output should be, and look, Kevin, we're talking about his numbers. Kevin, in my view, Bruno Fernandes is a stat padder. You know, look, his numbers are good, but it's not a reflection of the team. We finished 15th last season with Bruno in the team last season. You know, Bruno Fernandes had an absolute opportunity in the final against Spurs to grab us by the scruff of the neck and didn't. Kevin, it was moments. I noticed you missed out loser pool. Not smoking nothing to say yet. It's ironic, say it, yeah. Yeah. Valverde, FC 26. Mainoo clearly not fancied by Amorim. I do agree with that. Remove the captaincy. He'll throw himself on the floor and have a tantrum like he does on the pitch and demand to leave. So problem solved. We need to let him move on to his run. So look, guys, I know I haven't answered all the questions about the stadium. I'll bring that into tonight's show when that's kind of more of a free for all show tonight. I am going to go. I do need to get back to work, sadly. But I will be back this evening. I will be back tonight with a late show. And look, I'll be bringing in the stuff that's been said today. We'll talk about the stadium then. I'll bring in some stuff tonight. And look, tonight's show is always that show whereby, you know, bring anything into the show. Maybe there'll be more stuff on Kobbie Mainoo tonight. I'm going to try not to regurgitate that stuff tonight. So look, guys, legend of the chat. Johnny says the issue I have with people that defend Bruno so much is that they are the same ones who criticise Cristiano in the season. We finished 6th and got all the goals. I will be on time. JB, speak to you later. I will be on probably about 10 o'clock tonight. So I will do the late show again tonight. That is one of my favourite shows. So look, bring in your stuff tonight as well. Anything that you see. Have a good afternoon. Great stream as ever. These make my day. Simon, absolute legend, my friend. I'm so glad that you guys are here. As I always say, you guys make the channel. It doesn't matter if we don't agree or whether we agree or not. I think all your opinions on here are fantastic, and this is why I try and give you the platform to bring in your opinions, because we all need a voice, right? And we don't always have to agree, but I think not agreeing absolutely makes this channel what it is. So I will be back this evening. Thank you so much. Yeah, legends completely. Thank you for supporting the channel. Thank you for the likes. You guys are amazing. So look, I will be back this evening. Have a good rest of your morning. Well, morning, afternoon, evening, wherever you are in the world, and I'll see you later on. Take care.